Mimi, I have a couple questions for you, one of which occurs to me. I did hear one of the analysts say today the president made a mistake there by saying this is the first he's heard of the phone call, only because this is going to come up again and again and again.
Right. Well, he's boxed himself in now to a certain defense. He can't say, I remember the conversation and that's not what I said. He's boxed himself in now to it didn't happen. He has to make it look like not just one person, but numerous people are either lying or mistaken about it. Sondland, on down, right? Because it's a conversation that is, and this will get into some other issues, but it's a conversation that involves multiple people.
Right.
And so he's now boxed himself into, I don't remember. And so the only defense he has is it didn't happen, as opposed to giving it a more it happened, and here's an innocent defense of it. Republicans, it seems to me, hit back on two major areas today. Number one, it can't be a crime because the aid went through to Ukraine. Neil Katyal sat where you're sitting now for a good portion of the day and compared it to just because you're involved in a bank robbery, yet you never see the payout, doesn't make it less of a crime. The second part was the graphic I looked up and saw on Fox News in the past hour. Democrats say hearsay is an acceptable form of evidence. We heard it again and again today. Illuminate us. So, first of all, I mean, obviously, hearsay is a rule of evidence that applies in a courtroom, which this isn't. What we're really talking about, what they're trying to say is, this isn't people testifying or saying what they heard from Donald Trump's mouth. OK, well, first of all, as many people made the point today, as you just showed, well, they're blocking all those people. So it's absolutely wrong and absurd for them to be saying, well, you don't have those firsthand witnesses, because they have literally stopped those witnesses from testifying. But more importantly, people don't commit crimes alone. OK, and forget, this criminal code and whatever. People don't do bad acts like this, extorting other countries for, information to help their campaign alone. They have to carry it out through other people. So the statements of Giuliani, Sondland, Mulvaney, people like that, it's not just their statements. Their statements are part of their agreement. They're carrying something out for Donald Trump. And so those statements are not only reliable, but imperative to understanding the scope of what happened here. So for them to try and dismiss those as secondhand statements, Sondland telling Ambassador Taylor something is incredibly relevant. Sondland was the guy, on the ground carrying this out and telling people what they could and couldn't do. So, and that's a tool that we use when we're prosecuting organized crime cases, which is a parallel we've made very often here. But it's important, and it's admissible even in a court of law where the rules of evidence do apply.
Frank, of course, everyone will view and hear what happened today from the comfort or echo chamber of their own silos. But for you watching what happened today, do you think it moved the chains?
So I view this as day one of what I compare to a grand jury proceeding. This was the first day. This was laying a foundation, showing us the direction of where this was going. And I don't think today changed any hearts and minds, but I do think as this moves forward and as the Republican strategy of saying, hey, this is hearsay, when are we going to hear people who talked directly with the president? And we do hear from people who were on the call or talked directly with the president. Their strategy is going to start to crumble. And I think some people are going to start to doubt what they're putting out. There's a lot of nonsense put out today. There was confusion, deliberate distraction and deflection and that line between the president intending and desiring to engage in a bribe and the fact that the bribe never came to fruition, and therefore they think, well, nothing happened that's impeachable. Huge mistake here. So did the ball move today? Probably not. Could it easily move in the weeks ahead? You bet.
Mr. Crowley, you're the only one of the four of us who can tell the folks watching tonight, what was it like to cover the White House on a day like today?
Right, Brian. I was at the White House today. I was the pool reporter, so I was in the in the room with the president on a few occasions, a couple of times in the Oval Office and at the press conference he had, all of them with the Turkish President Erdogan, who was visiting today. And, you know, the White House did very much have a kind of business as usual attitude. President Trump seemed to be, you know, in a pretty normal mood and did not raise the impeachment proceedings himself. On a couple of different occasions when he was asked about them, he did answer, but, you know, unlike some other occasions, he didn't kind of go into the sort of, you know, rambling, almost rants that we've seen about this, and particularly the Mueller investigation, where he sort of goes on and on and on. He was, by his own standards, fairly disciplined. To me, was showing an awareness that, you know, he was trying to limit his commentary. Maybe he realizes that when he really blows his stack, it kind of fuels the fire and heightens the sense of crisis. Meanwhile, the Turkish president is visiting, and that in and of itself was a pretty strange situation. You know, here is Erdogan, who essentially defied American policy, defied the president's protestations, invaded northeastern Syria, infuriated top U.S. military and diplomatic officials, leading members of Congress. President Trump had him to the White House. Several members of Congress said that he should rescind the invitation. And Trump called himself a big fan of the Turkish leader, who also is an authoritarian who has imprisoned journalists, and basically spent the day, it appeared, trying to find ways to increase trade with Turkey and to get Turkey to avoid sanctions that Congress wants to slap on the country for buying an advanced Russian missile defense system. So, you know, that was a very strange subplot today, Brian, that kind of got buried. But we still have to ask ourselves, what is it about this authoritarian Turkish leader that President Trump seems to admire so much?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.